So I've spent some time working on the skinning of the character, moving around the twist bones and the stretch bones that we added in the shoulder area, as well as I've added some extra bones for the stomach and top of the leg to try and fix some areas. So what I'm going to do is just run through some of the changes I've made, some of the way I've used the techniques that I've been showing you to try and get this character deforming a little bit better. One of the things I do as I start getting to this point is I throw a mesh smooth, just a level 1 or even a 2 on it, which is usually where I'm rendering it at, and I start doing preview render tests just to see what's going on. So I've actually changed up the animation here, a bit more dynamic poses. And what I'm looking for now is looking at the surface and see how it's moving. Don't always look just how a joint is deforming, whether or not it's keeping its form, but don't forget muscles are driven across the body in larger areas than just a shoulder joint, let's say. The chest of the character should be stretching and moving. As the arm goes up, you can see the nipple and the chest moves and stretches with it. It's because the muscles run right across the front of the body. This is the sort of thing we're looking for, is to make sure that the body feels like it's moving naturally and it's alive, not just a joint bending and it isn't crashing through itself. It has to really look like it's being driven by something. So that's the ultimate goal. A very difficult goal to get, but the ultimate goal. So I've also got a back view of this as well, and you can see that I've done a lot of work around the shoulder area, through the neck. The head rotates now nicely and does some nice flexing. Shoulder area is doing some nice flexing. Even getting fairly good reaction out of the hip areas. I'm still getting some odd creasing going through the down to the crotch, which is a very difficult area to work on. I might even have to add another couple bones in there, a couple more stretch bones. I'll show you what I've done to get the top of it working nice. The top of the leg is not crashing here anymore. This is a really, can be a really bad area. As that leg lifts, it can start folding the stomach in basically on itself here, and it can start looking quite nasty. What I've done is added another stretch bone, and it's working very nicely to sort of fix that area. So here's the character now as it sits. What I've done is I've added a few extra bones in. The shoulder areas have remained the same. I've just simply worked on the weighting. I worked more on the weighting of the arm and down through the fingers and the wrist area to try and sharpen it up. One of the areas that's still causing problems in the arms is that we're going to fix in the next section is the fact that we're getting really bad crashing here. There's no muscle deformation going on. We're going to use some built-in tools and skin to correct that. As well as in the knee areas, we're getting some really bad crashing of the mesh into each other. And we're going to try and rectify a little bit of that as well using the same techniques. So what I've done in the legs is I've added another stretchy bone on the top here. And this stretchy bone basically sits right across the area that we were getting a fold happening across the top of the leg here. It was folding here as it bent down. With that stretchy bone now, we can weight to that and we can use it to lift the skin up out of the way. So with the skin on, if I pick that stretchy bone up at it, you can see it's just has a nice soft area here where it's picking and lifting the mesh up out of the way as the leg lifts. This way we're not getting that nasty folding that's happening, because as this leg lifts higher and higher, if it was just weighted to this bone and something in the spine, it would get to a point where it would just be pushing the vertices into one another and not actually out. And this is now adding that. The other bone I've added is actually a bone in the belly, and this can be used in a couple of different ways. One, you could just go and hand animate this bone if you really wanted. And we can get a little bit of belly bounce out of the character this way. So again, this is great because we could do this. Looks like we need a bit better weighting down through the crotch area, although this character will eventually be covered with cloth of some kind anyhow, and we won't see that area. So you can see that I've weighted this bone in nice soft. One of the things I also did is I parented the ends of the stretch bones in the legs up to it as well. So if I didn't do that, what I would get is not quite as much flex probably in areas I want. It might be a little overkill right now, but it doesn't look too bad. But it's giving me some nice flex all the way through here because those stretch bones are moving as well. Once again, that's part of how we have to look at characters, is that when one area is, especially a big mass like the belly here, is moving, it's probably going to move other areas and pull on other areas of the mesh that isn't just local to it. So a bit of tricky linking or constraint systems can actually help look like one area is driving another a bit more. Another thing we're going to do in this next section is actually set this belly bone up with a spring controller, which will do a little bit of cheap dynamics for us. It'll allow for a little bit of bouncing in the belly automatically, so that the animator doesn't have to deal with that. That's a great way to be able to set up just simple skin jiggles. It's not really a dynamics tool, but it allows you to be able to handle just little jiggles and little bounces and things without having to run simulations. So you can see with the extra skinning in the shoulder areas, we're getting some nice stretching across the shoulders. The neck's doing some nice things. It's not too bad. Might be pulling too much in the shoulders again now, but again, we can just work on the skinning to get that. But you can see the muscles down from the neck are reacting the way you'd expect them to react. The shoulder area stretches and flexes really nicely. The lats down the back move, the chest moves, and everything's starting to move and flex the way we'd expect it to flex now. A little bit more than just the initial bones that we had set up. So you can see it really starting to flex nicely through the shoulder area, and this is one of the worst areas. This in the top of the legs, because it's dealing with all three rotations. You can try and use morphing systems for this, but I find that it's very, very difficult to get it right. Just using morphing of some kind through the shoulders and the top of the legs. There's a lot going on, a lot of different dynamic motions that happen, and you'd have to take an enormous amount into consideration when trying to develop all your targets based on the rotations of the arm. So this sort of system here, you can see it's nice. Everything's being pushed in correct directions. All the muscle systems being driven down through the chest and through the back. Well, there's the state he is now. Let's take a look about fixing elbows and the knee joints, as well as setting up a belly bounce to get a little bit of automatic bounce in the stomach going.